Hi, I'm Cheryl Kagan, very proud to be the senator for Gaithersburg and Rockville. Welcome to this week's edition of Kibbitzing with Kagan, brief conversations with people I find fascinating. With me today is my longtime friend and colleague, Delegate Chairman Kumar Barve. Kumar, thank you so much for taking time to chat.
Thanks for inviting me. This sounds like it's going to be a lot of fun.
I think so. So I would like to start at the beginning, but we're going to go pretty fast into all of the stuff and all your many accomplishments. So you are local, as am I, and you graduated from Paint Branch High School in Montgomery County, and then got your BS in accounting at Georgetown. So talk about your childhood and your education.
Okay, so I grew up in the 60s and I grew up listening to the Beatles and the Rolling Stones. I grew up watching Star Trek, and the Odd Couple and all the stuff that I feel sometimes like my childhood is defined by the sitcoms that I watch, Green Acres and,
Brady Bunch, Partridge Family.
I wasn't so much into those two ones,
Oh,
but
okay.
then more like the Beverly Hillbillies and
Okay. Must be because
Gibson
you're
Style.
so much older than me. It's a different.
Yes, I know. It's like, boy, those 2 years are really. So, though I was the only Indian kid in elementary, junior high school. I would have to, now, of course, I grew up in Silver Spring,
Right.
so I had lots of Jewish friends. At that time, I thought Jews made up a majority of the American population. And I would explain the way to pronounce my last name by saying Barve rhymes with Oive.
That's funny. I
Yeah.
love that. I love
And so, yeah, no, it was, it's weird being not black or white. And there was a period of time where I was picked on by everybody. And so my father's solution to that was to have me learn karate. So that worked.
Amazing. I was going
Yeah.
to ask if you were bullied. Now, since it was before the era of the internet or social media, how did bullying or being picked on, how did that get manifested for you?
Oh, kids beating me up, kids making fun of me. But I will tell you something. Once I learned how to actually throw a punch into somebody's nose, or better yet, solar plexus, and knock the wind out of them, that all stopped very, very quickly. But it's funny. Even during the times where I was being bullied by some people, I always had lots of friends, and I never had difficulty making friends. So it's not like I was a completely isolated individual or anything
Sure.
like. And it helps to grow up in Montgomery County, and it helps to grow up in a jurisdiction with lots of Jews, because Jewish parents didn't put up with their kids treating other kids like that, in
Yeah,
my observation.
yeah. So you and I first met in 1986 when I was on the campaign staff of our then Congressman Mike Barnes, who was
Yeah.
running for the Senate, the U.S. Senate, and you got involved and helped with fundraising and organizing and outreach in the Indian American community. Why Mike, and why politics? How did you first get involved as an
Well,
accountant?
actually, I first got involved in 1974 working on the campaign of a guy running for the House of Delegates named Bob Hacken. This is up in District 14, which is northeastern Montgomery County, where Paint Branch High School is. And he was running for the House of Delegates as a Democrat against a guy named Joel Chasnoff, who won.
Oh,
But I learned how to door knock. We did a lot of stupid things in the campaign. Like, he felt that all the stuff we mailed out had to be hand addressed. So, oh yeah, there was like 10 of us from Paint Branch hand addressing all these things. But then he had us all out knocking doors. And so he spent very little money. He was running against the slate, and I think he got this will sound terrible, he got 40% of the vote, but in those days, if you were running against the slate,
right.
30% or 20% was, so he outperformed.
Okay.
And it was kind of cool is that when I won my election in 1990.
We're not there yet. We're not there yet. Hold
Right.
on.
Okay.
Okay. So 1986, what did you learn on Mike Barnes's campaign? So you were taking it up. That's a lot of years later than your first campaign.
So I discovered that the most powerful thing a politician can have is good positioning with respect to geography. I mean, I was convinced that Mike would be a better senator, and frankly, I think I was right. I think we were all correct. But Barbara Mikulski, who was not bad, and we didn't think she was bad,
Right.
Barbara Mikulski was from the Baltimore region, and when one of the Baltimore candidates dropped out, bang, that just consolidated that entire region. And so I discovered the importance of geography in politics.
Yes. And just for folks who are watching who may not know this, Barbara Mikulski was the first woman, first Democratic woman elected to the U.S. Senate in her own right, not following a spouse or a parent or something. So, and served very honorably and vigorously for a very long time.
She was a great senator.
Yeah. So 1990, you ran for the House of Delegates. Why? How?
Wait a minute, you're skipping ahead of one thing. After that election, you know, Mike Barnes lost, Stuart Bainham lost.
Yes.
And I was approached by the executive director of Maryland NARAL. They
Yep.
knew I was an accountant. They
Yep.
knew I was pro-choice.
Yep.
I thought it would be a great way to meet women. So it wasn't, but so I was the treasurer of Maryland NARAL, and then eventually,
Just translating NARAL is the National Abortion Rights Action League, is what it's
yes,
called then.
the National
It's the
Abortion Rights
pro-choice.
League of Maryland,
Yes.
which is now called Pro-Choice Maryland, the
Yes.
organization.
Yes.
And I became the first man to serve on the board of directors, and so I became very involved in the pro-choice movement.
Yep.
And I became more involved in democratic politics as a result of that. So I knew how to knock on doors.
Right.
I saw somebody like, well, Peter Franchot came from literally out of freaking nowhere.
True.
He moved into Tacoma Park, knocked on more doors than anybody else, did 9 pieces of direct mail, came in first place. And I thought, oh, I could do that.
Right.
You know? So I was, and of course, you were a friend, and you gave me a lot of great advice, including something that I regard as a very key piece of advice. Do you want me to tell what it is?
Please.
So after about a month and a half to 2 months of knocking on doors, you said, Kumar, I need to have lunch with you. I need to tell you something. So we had lunch, and she said, you know, Kumar, you're knocking a lot of doors. You're probably getting to more doors than anybody else. You're running, but if you don't do something to break out of the pack, you're just going to be an also-ran. Okay, Cheryl, what should I do to break out of the pack? And you said, you should be the first delegate candidate to endorse Mary Borges for the state Senate. And I thought to myself, yeah, that is really good advice. And so we set up the press conference. Mary was there, and the press, of course, immediately turned to her and said, so are you supporting Kumar Barve? And she says, well, I'm very supportive of Kumar Barve.
Right.
And ultimately, she put me on her slate. And I think that advice and you helping me do that was a very key component of my victory.
Awesome. Yay. It's only 10 million years ago. I also hosted my first ever event, coffee, open house thing for you and for Stephen Hoffman. You were running against each other, but I thought you were 2 of the best candidates, and Mary Borges for Senate. So
yeah,
that turned out to be a strong slate, and Mary and you both won. And
yeah,
that was cool. So you came to the House in 1990. And have served so well since then. I joined you 4 years later, and we got a lot done for the residents of Gaithersburg, Rockville, and formerly of Garrett Park. Talk about your early experiences, and then you were moved quickly into leadership opportunities.
So let me begin with the funniest thing. At the Democratic caucus meeting, we had to renominate then Speaker Clay Mitchell to be the Democratic nominee for Speaker. And the Democratic chair of the caucus, gave a speech. And part of the theme of the speech was, we've had many breakthroughs, more women, more Black folks. We have 2 Asian Americans. We have a Filipino American and an American Indian. To which I immediately stood up and said, that's Indian American, turbans, not feathers.
Right.
The place just cracked up. And so I established early on my sense of humor before them. And let me tell you, in the legislature, a sense of humor is a powerful
Huge.
thing. Yeah. And so I got assigned to the Economic Matters Committee, which was being chaired by Cass Taylor, and that's significant only because he went on to become the Speaker of the House of Delegates. And so I was able to kind of ride his coattails to being, I mean, not that I needed it to become elected chairman of the Montgomery County delegation, but it's certainly helpful to have the support of the Speaker. I was put on subcommittee chairmanships very, very quickly. And then, and I don't know if this is moving too fast for you, but when ultimately he was defeated, my good friend and the Economic Matters Committee Chairman, Mike Bush, got elected Speaker, and he made me majority leader. And I've been in races since then.
Yes. So, so Cass Taylor was my speaker for my 8 years in the House, and he was wonderful, but he was also a conservative, anti-choice, pro-gun Democrat, and kind of one of the last of his kind, I think.
Well, he was, but and everything you say is absolutely true. However, he was very liberal on a lot of things, and in spite of being a pro Second Amendment guy, he was very supportive of a bill that I don't remember what the bill did, but there was this lovely photograph of Governor Glendening, he and Senate President Miller, and Bill Clinton and Kathleen Kennedy.
Yes.
And unfortunately, that photograph became billboards in his district to defeat him, and that's why he lost his race.
Yep. So, majority leader. So talk about what that job is and what you liked or found challenging about it.
Well, okay, the job of the majority leader is to be the voice of the Democratic majority on the floor of the House, and most particularly the voice of the Speaker of the House. The Speaker doesn't get on the floor and debate. He has his or her majority leader do it for them.
Yes.
I loved every moment of it. I did not like, the one thing I didn't care for as majority leader, but it's part of the job, is that I don't have an opinion. I can go into Speaker Bush or Speaker Jones's office and express to them in a closed room how I disagree with them. But the minute I leave, my policies are the Speaker's policies, and there can be no exceptions to that. And some majority leaders prior to me would like stand up on the floor and say, I'm now speaking as a delegate from District 14, for example. No, there was none of that. I always was majority leader. Now, we had a Republican governor for the first time in eons, so I got to basically go toe to toe with the Republican administration, and it was so much fun.
Talk about how you prepared. I mean, to be able to speak in a facile way, clear way, persuasive way, on all the big issues. And obviously you don't stand up on every issue, because raising the salary for the sheriff of Dorchester County, that's not your thing. But on all big ones, how did you prepare? Who did you rely on? And did you ever feel like you missed it?
There were a couple of instances where I felt I could have said something slightly differently, but my philosophy on this, I don't know if you know this, in high school and college, I did a lot of acting. And actors, part of the training of being an actor is improv. And so early in my educational career, I kind of was riffing on other people, and I was learning. And so I use those skills in politics a lot. The other thing I found to be really a useful, helpful strategy, and I think this is useful for people even if they're not elected office holders, if you want to communicate to somebody, make it one message, because if you try to communicate two messages, the listener will choose which of those two to ignore. And if you do three, they'll ignore two out of the three. You just say one thing and nail it down, everybody remembers it. And the other thing I discovered in the job is that sometimes you just literally have to go to the reporter and tell them directly what you want them to know. Why take this?
Okay.
And a sense of humor really helps.
Totally. We are going to get to some of that, actually. So there was a new committee created, Environment and Transportation, and you were named chair. So why don't you talk about the jurisdiction, the range of issues you worked on, and what it was like shifting from majority leader to chair of one of the 6 standing committees in the House of Delegates?
Well, one of the things is when you become the chair of a committee, you have to, you can't be as flamboyant as a majority leader. You have to take into account the needs and wants of the Democrats, the Republicans, conservatives, the liberals, people from all different parts of the state. So I can't make snarky comments. Okay.
Dang, that's
I
hard.
think it's funny. I mean, as long as it's not mean, I can make crack jokes and be funny about it. For example, oftentimes people in the committee will not ask a question. They will like give a speech, and I will always remind them that the Jeopardy rule applies here. It has to be in the form of a question, and everybody
Isn't that so?
isn't that so,
Right.
right? And so the other thing I really liked about being a committee chairman is that I had really good subcommittee chairs always, and the few who weren't good, I was able to get them to be better. And the attitude I took is I delegated a lot. I couldn't remember all these bills.
Sure.
So I decided that all these subcommittee chairs were going to be lobes of my brain, and I was going to sub the thinking out to them. So, for example, David Fraser Hidalgo was a long time transportation and transportation meaning primarily the rules of the road, speed limits, stuff like that.
Right.
He was a former, he's a retired police officer. He knows his stuff. I do not spend a moment thinking about this stuff. Dave knows it and nails it.
Nice.
Most recently, Sarah Love, who is the new transportation person, she knows it and nails it. And so I don't feel under any obligation to know everything.
So Delegate Fraser Hidalgo and Delegate Love are both Montgomery County legislators from adjacent districts, but two different districts. But in Montgomery County.
Dave is from Potomac and Sarah is from basically the Bethesda area.
And they're both very talented. Okay.
Yeah, but I was able to sub out a lot of my thinking.
Yes.
And then, of course, also we were getting more freshmen and non-sub chairs to present bills on the floor. And once you give people responsibility, they will run over you to achieve your objectives for you.
Nice.
And so that's, to me, that's the key to running a good committee.
Yes. So what would you say is your favorite part of legislating?
Legislating, actually thinking up what to write down and thinking up how to think about things. Especially because this committee, Environment and Transportation, is so it's scientific. It's it's the chemistry and the biology of the Chesapeake Bay, of clean air. There's just a lot of literature you can educate yourself on. I spent a lot of time reading scientific literature about global climate change, for example. And so I actually am able to call up these scientists and say, hi, I'm the chair of this committee, and would you be willing to do a be a Zoom witness to explain something to my committee?
Yes.
And invariably they would say yes. And since COVID, we've had this system where we can have people from New York or California testifying before our committee to brief them on issues. And I took advantage of that. Yeah, that's the answer.
That's great. So I have so many things. I'm just trying to think of the order. So when you were first elected, one of the very memorable mailers as treasurer of NARAL was of an unmade bed. And I still remember that from 1990, 33 years ago. And
you know whose bed that was?
No.
Kim Lamphere.
Oh, no. Kim Lamphere, now gone.
Late Kim Lamphere, yeah.
Yeah. I did not know that. So, but you have been committed to women's reproductive choice for decades. And as you indicated, just earlier than a lot of our male allies were willing to get out there. Now,
people thought it was risky. People who were pro-choice, though, and there were people running for office in my race, as you remember, with one noteworthy exception. Everybody was pro-choice, but I was the only one who leaned into it hard.
Yeah. So that was at the beginning of your career. And now here we are wrapping up and abortion is back. Take a moment and talk about the importance of the constitutional amendment. Maryland is a pro-choice state, and what you feel like your role has been in the issue.
Well, and I think it's really ironic that gay marriage is completely uncontroversial, and we're still fighting over abortion rights. But abortion issue, to me, has always been about controlling women. And I don't think there's any other way to say it, because, if you take away from a woman the ability to control her reproductive processes, then you're basically taking away their fundamental rights as a person, because this is the thing that women have to orient their lives around, when and if to have children.
Yep.
And so I always saw it from that perspective. I saw it from that perspective. I saw it from the perspective as a Hindu, which is a super, super small minority religion. I saw it from the perspective of not having government impose the religious beliefs of one group of people onto a different group of people. And by the way, I brought up gay rights. I was pretty early with that, and I completely understood trans rights, because it was the same kind of, it's not the same thing, but it's a very similar kind of a oppression that's exerted by society against people who are different. And I guess if I could summarize my social political philosophy, it's this, Cheryl: if you're different, I want to be on your side, because I know what it's like to be different and to be picked on. And I think that even though women are a majority of the population of most countries, they are a functional minority in the sense of how women are treated. And so, I find it really astounding that we're still talking about this, but maybe the Dobbs ruling, it's now becoming real for people who were just kind of pro-choice but assumed nothing horrible would happen. Well, horrible things are happening. I guess in Florida,
interrupting for a second, the Dobbs decision was the Supreme Court's ruling that overturned Roe v. Wade, made abortion legal.
And now this guy, Ron DeSantis, who wants to run for president, signed
the governor of Florida.
You can only have an abortion in the first 6 weeks. Well, who knows they're pregnant in the first 6 weeks? Right. It's basically a ban on abortion, and that's what it has to be recognized as.
Yeah. So I'm going to pick up on, you were talking about people who are different. So the Maryland House of Delegates, for the first time in history, has a woman speaker and a person of color, Adrienne Jones, and talk about what the dynamic, how you see the dynamic. And we just had the experience of, in my view, a totally disrespectful uprising on the final night of the 2023 legislative session, our 90-day session. Talk about how Speaker Jones and her presence you think matters.
Well, Speaker Jones is emotionally unflappable. The woman has a spinal column of pure stainless steel. Nothing bugs her. She doesn't allow herself to be intimidated or pushed around. And this is unusual for a person who's so open to listening to people, because she really does want to hear what people have to say, but she does not put up with any nonsense. Right. Now, it was funny. After that happened, we were all in my committee having adult beverages and talking about what had transpired. And I said, if Adrienne were a man or a white person, this would never have happened. And pretty much everybody was nodding their head. Yeah, right. If she were a man, it wouldn't have happened. And I think it was more her being a woman than being a black person. I think it was being a woman. And, no one would have done this to Mike Bush, because what your viewers need to understand is that any bill that doesn't pass at the end of session, it dies. Okay? So there is a big time crunch, and the Republicans frequently try to slow things down to kill as many Democratic bills as they can. And so speakers, whether it was Speaker Mike Bush, Speaker Cass Taylor, Speaker Clay Mitchell, there comes a point like 4 or 5 hours before the end of the session where they just start bashing on. They start ignoring people who want to explain their votes. You go cruising through there. And Adrienne didn't do anything different, but she's a woman, so they decided to have a hissy fit. And she put them in their place.
She sure did. So I have a lot more to cover, and we're starting to run a little long. Okay. I want to know what your proudest accomplishment is in the House of Delegates.
Well, there are a lot of very big bills that I've worked on that I'm very proud of, but I'm not going to give you a list of those things. You know, the environmental stuff and the health stuff. No, the proudest thing that I feel I have is the culture I created on my committee.
Nice.
I and my vice chair, Dana Stein, he
It's
and I.
wonderful. Baltimore County.
Yeah, he and I put together a culture where people felt free to ask as many questions as they wanted. When I had to speed things along, because I was so good about letting them ask questions when we had time, they were very good. They stopped asking questions or as many questions.
Right.
I created a situation where anyone could come into my office, anyone could disagree with me. And the other thing I did, which I'm pretty proud of, is that there were many bills you can't pass because they're poorly thought out or just bad ideas. And I would always say, listen, we're going to study this over the interim. The interim is when we're not meeting as a legislature, and we will consider taking it up in the next year. And I think more people believed me because we kept our word. I mean, we pollinator protection policies. Well, I won't go through the list, but there's just a lot of things that we didn't do one year, and then we studied it and said, okay, now we're ready and we're going to do it. And so people believed me. And so I guess that kind of a culture is something I'm very proud of having fostered now that America appears to be dismantling its principles of good behavior in government.
Yes. All right, total pivot here. You and I were two of the very early people to endorse Wes Moore and Aruna Miller. Tell me why you thought they were the right pick and how different it was this year to be working with a Democrat and a Democratic administration than 8 years of Larry Hogan. Governor.
So I really think all you have to do is meet Wes Moore to want to support him. And Aruna Miller, it's the same thing with her. And the minute he picked her, I immediately endorsed Wes Moore. And I'll tell you why. And it's, people say, oh, okay, she's Indian, she's from Montgomery County, that's why you endorsed her. No, I was super impressed that a Black guy like Wes Moore would go against I'm sure every political consultant said, you need to pick a white woman.
Right.
And he decided, nope, I'm going to pick this woman who I think is really terrific, and her skin tone is exactly the same as mine, and I don't care. And that's a gutsy move. And so it was clear to me that this is somebody who will make a gutsy move when he feels it's warranted, and we need more of that in government. Nice. And it's impossible not to like him.
Nice. True. Totally true. Okay, so big shift. The governor nominated you to the PSC, the Public Service Commission.
Right.
And you
wait, I didn't complete the answer. You wanted to know what it's like working with a Democratic governor.
Go ahead.
So the difference between 71 votes and 85 votes. When the Republican is a governor, you need to override the Republican vetoes. Now, of course, we only need a majority to pass law. We just need to make sure it's sensible, and that's the main difference, and it's wonderful.
Yes, agreed. Okay, the PSC.
Yeah.
So there were conversations, you were offered the appointment, you said yes, you're giving up your decades and leadership position in the House. Why? Why the PSC? Why is that the right next step for you? And what are you most looking forward to? But why don't you start with exactly what the PSC regulates and why it's such an important job?
The PSC, the Public Service Commission, is a body that regulates monopolies or near monopolies. So, for example, electric power generation, natural gas distribution, also weirdly, Uber and Lyft in Baltimore City, and cabs as well. And let's see what else. I believe
911. 911 is connected because of the telephone. They do telephone stuff.
That's right. And so landlines and telephones, and also water. Although water is, because these are publicly run agencies, they don't get the same kind of oversight that Baltimore Gas and Electric or Washington Gas or Pepco will have. And so First of all, I see this as an extension of my work fighting global climate change. Now, it's not a legislative post. I can't come into Annapolis and opine saying vote for this, vote against that. It's quasi-judicial, which means that if we're hearing a rate case or if we're hearing a trial of some sort, I can't talk to the litigators unless they're both there. So it's more like my wife's job, who is right, a workers' compensation judge, now the chair. So, we'll both be commissioners, but because she's the chair, she outranks me.
Just
and I'm totally comfortable with that.
Yay, there you go. So there are 5 members, 5 commissioners on the PSC, on the Public Service Commission. And just to be clear, so you said rate payers, rate cases. I just want to make sure that if folks who are watching understand that's RATE. I just wouldn't want them to mishear it and think that you were judging sexual assault cases.
Yeah, no,
Yeah.
right.
So I'm just saying that very clearly.
Electric power. So I have to tell you, I can't tell you specifically all this stuff because I don't really know the nuts and bolts. Apparently, they're going to send me to rate school. They have this seminar where they teach you about the rate setting process in electric power and gas, natural gas industry. So I go back to school for Kumar.
I love that. So as you know, but folks watching may not. So I'm vice chair of the committee that very recently, just the last few months, got new jurisdiction, and we now have energy in our portfolio. And we
I look forward to coming to your committee.
You will be in my committee, so I'm psyched about that. Anything you're most looking forward to on the Public Service Commission?
Well, I like the fact that they're going to have a place for me to plug my car in, so that's nice. I just kind of felt like I needed a change. I've been in the legislature for 32 years. On the one hand, I love it. I could do this for another 30 years. I mean, I literally could, but I really think I need to change. I think that new leadership needs to take over. There needs to be more churn in the legislature. And this, for me, is the perfect change because I will have all sorts of opportunities to come back and visit my friends in the legislature. And so I'm moving on, but kind of not. So but I love being the chair of Environment and Transportation, and I'm going to miss it. I know I'm going to miss it.
Yes. We're going to pivot in a second, but tell me, I just lost it. Your successor is going to be selected by the Democratic Central Committee. Without naming names, what are some of the characteristics, skills, or experiences that you would like to see in your successor representing Gaithersburg and Rockville?
I'm a little afraid to answer that because every person is new and different. You and I have different skills and pluses and minuses, and the voters elected us. And so I'm very unwilling to throw my thumb on the scale. I mean, I would, the one thing that I'm not happy about is that we don't have special elections for the House of Delegates and the Senate. And I know there are a couple of people, well, one person who said that I don't intend to run for re-election. And I mean, I like the idea of the seat that I occupy ultimately being decided upon by the voters.
By the voters.
My district, because it's not my seat. This seat belongs to the voters, not to me. So I try not to, everybody talks about, who will take my seat in the legislature? It's not I have to discipline myself not to say it that way because that's not a proper way.
I totally agree. People who say, you're, Jenny Forehand's seat or your seat, same thing. It's, I have been given we are each given a 4-year contract. And then if we run for re-election, we are asking for renewal of a 4-year contract. And that's really important. All right. So before we go to our Fast Five, you have to talk about Kumar the Magnificent.
Okay.
For folks who don't know what that is, why don't you just do a quick overview? And if you'd like, you can give an example of a joke that everybody will get.
Okay. So Kumar the Magnificent was based on the Johnny Carson character, Karnak the Magnificent. And basically, he would wear a turban. So I wear a turban. I'm Indian, so it's totally legit for me to do that. and he puts up an envelope and it tells you what the answer is, and then he opens it up and he reads the question. And it's one of the funniest comedy things ever. When we had something called the Legislative Follies,
So
which I
fun.
ran for 8 years, I did that, and I do it now in committee. And so, for example, a question was, the answer is 2023. And the question is, how many bills did Dana Stein introduce this year? He introduced a lot of bills. Or I remember once saying the answer is 2019. How many questions did Regina Boyce and Melissa Wells ask in committee? So
The
it's
legislators, yes.
yeah,
Publicity.
legislators,
Yeah.
right? And so it's it's a way
Funny.
for us to make fun of ourselves,
Right.
and it's an awful lot of fun. I'm going to have to find a way to do that on the Public Service Commission.
100%, 100%.
Yeah.
We're gonna have to bring you back to Annapolis to do that.
That's true, right?
But in the meantime, delegate chairman, soon to be former delegate, my friend Kumar Barve. It's time for the fast five. 5 quick questions with 5 quick answers.
Okay.
Question number 1, what is your favorite snack, your favorite junk food?
Spicy pork rinds.
Okay. Question number 2, if you could have a meal with anyone living or dead, whom would you choose?
Ooh, either Gandhi or Neil Armstrong.
Good choices. Question 3, and I should have said my interns came up with this list.
Sure.
With 4 of them. 3, what is a hobby? What is something you especially either took up or spent more time on during COVID, or that gives you a break from what we do?
I like to go to the gym and work out. I like which is right across the street from me. I'm really into science fiction. I watch a lot of science fiction.
Okay.
I don't know, does that count as a hobby if you're watching?
Totally.
Okay.
Yeah. Question 4, what is a skill or talent that you'd like to learn?
One thing I could never master was musical instruments. So I'm seriously thinking about learning the guitar.
Nice. I love that. Cool. All right. You'll
We'll
have to come
see
to
if I
my...
stick to that,
Sorry?
We'll see how.
All right.
But I
Well,
do.
if you get good, maybe I'll have you come and do a marquee one song or something at one of my house concerts.
Oh, you don't want me singing. You do.
Okay. And the 5th question, Kumar Barve, what is your hidden secret skill or talent? What is your superpower? Something you're really good at that most folks can't do?
I'm not really emotional, so I don't lose my cool very easily. And I have a really thick skin, which is, people can say practically anything about me, and I just don't care. And so I think that's my superpower, is that I'm not very emotional. I'm Mr. Spock. I mean, when it comes, occasionally you get mad and bad things always happen. So, yeah.
Fantastic. Well, good for you.
Yeah.
Well, Kumar, it has been such a joy campaigning with you, legislating with you, hanging out with you and your beautiful wife, Maureen Quinn. And I look forward to staying connected, staying in touch, and continuing to represent you as a constituent.
Well, I'm hoping to march with you in the parade on May 31st with that big sign that Jenny Forehand had, which said, "Thank you for letting me represent you for 32 years. I'd really like to do that."
Love it. Look forward to it. Well, thank you for all you do, all you have done, and all you will do as a public service commissioner. Take care.
Just don't be rough with me when I come before the committee. Okay, try and be a little easy on me.
Yeah, no promise. No promise. All right, my dear. All the best to you. See you soon.
You too. See you soon.